Well, hello there. This is Shane from Shane's Books and Review, and I hope you are having a great day today. Today we're going to be talking about Dune, a book wrote by Frank Herbert. It's a classic. Dystopia is kind of our thing, and for a change, this is one of those books that is trying to reverse, I think, the utopian. Of course, I already know, I've already read it, but quick note about the narrations. The narrations was done by a team because overall the series is quite epic. And it was narrated by, of course, one of my favorites, Scott Brick, or like Cassidy, Ewan Morton, Simon Vance, Liana Kutchkin. As I mentioned, there's a lot in this book, and those narrations really add to it. It's sometimes helpful whenever there's a high production value. I know that whenever we first started talking about the Audible original stuff, right? I was like, how much of this can we have where we have this high production value but medium content level? And I think that is absolutely thrown out the window with this, because and the reason why is because this is one of those deep, hard science type, big political type, big family drama kind of a book. But with that cast of narrations that we get to experience in this book, it all adds flavor. It's not any kind of distracting from the people who directed the production. Did a really good job with this. Just that alone makes so much of a difference. And the reason that it makes such a difference is between the different characters, the different dialogue sets, the different rhythms that people use, or the different characters that these people were playing. It was all adding. None of it was subtracting. It was almost like there was a big yes and everybody was on board. Everybody loved the material, and it kind of comes out in this production. I really enjoyed it. If you've wanted to read Dune, but you just never really could sit down and grab that huge book, it's understandable. Give this a try. You might not be disappointed because it was just so well done. As I mentioned, it is part of a series, so let's move on from the voice actors, because they did a very, very nice job. It's very enjoyable. It's well done. Now for the characters. Oh boy, is there a list, but we're only in the first one, so it's not as big as it gets towards the end. The most important thing to know is there's this planet. This planet is called Dune. The reason why it is called Dune is because it's a sand planet. Okay, so we all probably already know that. You've probably seen the movie. I don't see how anybody could have made it to this point in the world and not have at least seen the movie, an excerpt, some kind of a spoiler. So I'm not really going to hold back on the spoilers so much, but I'm also not going to purposely give things away. Okay, so there's that. Whenever it comes to the movies, if I remember correctly, the movie, it loosely parallels Dune, and there's multiple versions of the movie too, and some of the sci-fi fanatically awesome people that know this, there's a particular version that I really like, and can you guess which one it is? I'm just curious to see which ones that you guys and gals will think down there. If you think you know which one it is, feel free, and I'll let you know if you got it or not for sure via comment. But we have these different houses. We have the House Atreides. We have the Harkonnens. We have the Emperor, the Padmak Shatterhand the Fourth, I think. And I could have really just screwed that name up, but there's some very interesting names in this book. There's, of course, as well, different characters within the House Atreides, such as Gurney and Howick and the Blessed Mother / BENE GESSERIT witches, and you have all this really unique stuff, but essentially it's alluded to that humanity kind of ditched technology at one point because things got really bad, and so we started to develop different types of people genetically through the bloodlines, and there's a race of people or a group of people that are known as MENTATS. And a MENTAT is essentially a human computer that can take all this data and spit out the most important and relevant possible outcomes or do vast calculations, etc. And then you have the BENE GESSERIT, which I just mentioned a while ago, which they form a couple of different roles. They're usually advisory, and they give information to each other, but they're very tight-chested whenever it comes to giving information outside of their guilds, and they're very, very controlling whenever it comes to trying to manipulate bloodlines by getting this house and this house, these two people, to marry and give a child, so that they can ultimately get to what they want, which is getting the Kwisatz Haderach to be born. Although it's something also that they don't want. They want to prevent it completely, although their lore says they want it. I know, dichotomous, right? Now, you not only have that group and that group, but there's also another group, which are the guilds members. And the guilds members are, in the movie, the big fish tank thing that looked very inappropriate. You'll know what I'm talking about if you've seen that movie. But they are the ones that are able to move from one point in space to another point in space. And they're very outside of everything, but on the same token, they're so very dependent on everything and everyone around them. But without them, nobody could move from planet to planet, because they're the ones that fold space so that people can jump from point A to point B. So there's some interesting play that can happen here with all of it. The Emperor, he's got his own motives and his own things that he wants to achieve, as well as trying to run the entire empire and the entire universe and everything that's known to mankind. So, you've got these houses, you've got these different types of guilds, you've got the interplays between people in particular houses that are in different types of guilds. And that's one of the things that keeps it so fresh. I've read this book probably 4 or 5 times in the course of my life. The first 3 times was by hardback, because audiobooks weren't a thing at that point. Essentially, all these groups are trying to achieve a thing. And in that trying to achieve the thing that they want, they are trying to accumulate power, hence the politics that are in it. Now, the main story, those are all the backstory. That's the backstories, people trying to achieve and get power. The main story has to do and revolve around Paul Atreides. Paul is a young man when this book starts, and by the end of the book, he's still a young man, but at least he's not like a teenager. Although he does go through a lot of transformative type things. So imagine a world that, if we lived in it, that people could have such advanced mental acuity and ability whenever it comes to being able to derive meaning from just a sentence or a raised eyebrow at a particular time. These are things that are natural and things that people are able to actually do right now. But what if it was took to the next level? And that's kind of what we see in here. Paul has been trained as a mentat for pretty much his entire life, but doesn't know it. And there's a particular point in the mentat training where they have to let the person that's being trained as a mentat to know that they have been groomed to become this thing. And then it is upon them deciding that they're going to follow through with said thing, which makes it where the training takes better hold, that they are able to actually explore their abilities and do these things with such incredible amounts of fervor and accuracy and all that. So we get this huge, rich introduction to everything. The exposition's kind of kept short. There's a couple of scenes that are a little bit long, but they're needed. And so I'm not complaining about it. It's masterfully wrote. It is such a masterwork. I can't say enough good about it. If you're into space and you're into sci-fi and you like seeing those sorts of stories where there's like things within things, plots within plots, feints within feints, that's kind of where all those words came from, because that's a commonality point throughout the book, of feints within feints or plots within plots. And that's true. There is a lot of that in here. And that's one of the other things that made it so fascinating, was seeing all the subversion and people plotting and trying to make this or make this or make this, and how things backfire. But in the grand scheme of things, everything is coming to a head on its own naturally. And even if they weren't plotting, I wonder if it would still get there. And I think it would have. There's all these... It's just an incredible read. That's as far as I'm going to go with telling you anything about it. If you're not excited about the book by now, probably not going to be for you. So, is it worth your time, efforts, and monies? Yes. If you like sci-fi and you like space and you like some interesting dynamics and wonderfully enriched backstories, yes, get this book. What are you doing with your life if you haven't already done it? Seriously, what have you done? Like I've mentioned, I have read this thing multiple times. And I will read it again and again and again. It's one of my favorites. It's on the top shelf, of course, for sure. Now, there's a point in the series where I kind of always drop off. We'll talk about that when we get to it, because I will cover some of the other books as well. Dune is a very enjoyable book for myself. Have you read it? And if you have, how many times? And is it a book that you would recommend to somebody else? And, or, is there a book like Dune that really gets you revved up, that you enjoy a lot, that you would like to share with the rest of us? And we'll go over it. So, it's time to say thank you. If you have watched this far, oh, you are awesome. Thank you so much for your time. It's very much appreciated. And not only is it appreciated, you are the coolest kid at the lunch table today. That's right. Enjoy it and bask in your glory. Like, share, subscribe. This is Shane with Shane's Books and Review. I'm not sure which one of these videos YouTube is going to recommend to you, but if you pick that one, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.